Hey guys, Andy here from Mediocre Hobbies coming at you with another 40k painting tutorial. This time I decided to go for Captain Messinius, one of the Black Library event miniatures that was released, I guess a couple of months ago now at this stage, but I'm finally getting around to doing him up after he once again appeared in a Dawn of Fire novel and was once again absolutely awesome. I love this character, so having any opportunity to get to bring you guys a video on him, I'm so excited. Now, originally the video was just supposed to be a video about painting Messinius, and I was a little bit nervous with painting Messinius because I haven't really painted white power armored models all that much in the past. I did White Scars for the Heresy series and stuff like that. Still a little bit nervous. This guy looked a little bit different, a little bit more kind of pastel-y than the pure white of a White Scar when you look him up online. But I'm happy to report that I did find a very cool way of doing the white armor. I'm incredibly pleased with the result, and I'm here to share that with you guys here today. Before I get into that video though, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of my active patrons. Without you guys, I would not be able to keep the lights on and the cameras rolling. If you're interested in getting involved in my Patreon, there are links to that below. You get benefits such as a private Discord server and access to an extra video every single week. So that's 52 extra videos a year. And that's not just my Patreon members, that's also for my channel members. A huge thank you to you guys as well. All right guys, without further ado, let's get into the video. So I decided a couple of years ago to stop buying the collector's models and then just leaving them in a box, telling myself I would get to them at a later date. These days when I get a nice model like this, I try and get it to the top of the pile and get it painted. So that's what I'm going to do here today with Captain Messinius. I got the model built up, I left his head as a separate piece, and then I sprayed in black and then white. Not grey Sierra, I went for pure white this time because we're trying to do white power armored. I do have both heads cut off, but I soon realized, and by soon I mean near the very end, that this is the wrong unhelmeted head. I've somehow gotten it mixed up. That was the Dark Angels Chapter Master's spare head. So I don't know where Messinius' head is, so I do apologize for that. So I will be just showing you how to paint the helmet in the video. Ultramarines Blue contrast is what I use to put the first coat of paint down on all of the blue parts. The blue parts being his little cape, his knee pad around the raptor hawk symbol, and then the actual hawk symbol itself on his shoulder pad. I found it kind of bizarre that these kind of colors were reversed depending on where they were on the model. So on his knee it's a black, or it's a blue background with a white head, and on the shoulder pad it's a blue shoulder pad with a white hawk head, but I guess that's just the way they work. So after I've gotten the blue base coat down, I went for some skeleton horde and then applied this up and down the tabard. Now, like I said at the beginning of making this video, it was just supposed to be a how to paint Captain Messinius video. But I do think the trick that I figured out, or not the trick, but how I figured out and how I will be painting white armor from now on, I think is super cool, and I do hope you guys find it extremely useful. It's basically just to do with the paint used. Retributor Armour Gold was then used for all of the beautiful detail and trim on this guy. If you aren't familiar with this character, he is in the Dawn of Fire series of novels, and he was a captain of the his chapter, and at some point he lost his power fist. It got damaged and destroyed and he had to discard it in the middle of a battlefield. He then spends a considerable amount of time with Rabute Gulliman himself, the Primarch, and as a parting gift before they went their separate ways, he gave him a relic like power fist from the Vaults of Terror. This thing is made of pure auramite, which is the same material that Custodes armor is made of. That's why he has such an ornate power fist in his hand. His plasma pistol was also gifted to him by the Primarch. So this guy's fairly kitted out and has gotten some nice toys from the main man himself. Black Templar contrast was used for any of the black details that we needed to get done. So it's just the casing of the plasma pistol and then any of the soft parts of the armor, so in between joints. And because the head is off, it's actually inside the whole neck joint we want to do with that as well. We don't want to be looking kind of past the head when it's on and seeing like white around it. It's nice to have that blacked out if you can do that. When I got to the point where I was pretty much done with applying all the base coats, I still have a bit more to do before I get to that point, but I was panicking as to what exactly I was going to do because white armor is definitely not my strong suit. And I started to think about what color I was going to shade the model, or if I was going to try and use streak and grime all over and just wipe it off to give it some definition, because the model is quite defined on his box art and on the website. In the end, I did end up just going for one of my old tricks, which is like a thin down sepia, but we'll get to that point in a moment. So Flesh Tear's red contrast used for his rope and the ribbon. Leadbelcher was used to block in any of the other metallic parts that aren't gold, so the two little religious icons with the bones that are hanging off his belt. Some of the workings of the plasma pistol, and honestly that's about it for the silver parts. It's got so much bling that if it's metallic it's usually gold. Painting with a model that has white armor is kind of nerve-wracking. You do need to take your time and not hit anything else, because it's going to be hard to cover up any mistakes. Wyldwood was then used for his belt. I don't know when Space Marine belts started becoming leather belts. Back in the day they were just blue power armor. They were parts of their armor. Now they're belts, which I find to be really bizarre. Does anyone else find that bizarre, that Space Marines now have little belts around their waist? Gutrippa Flesh was used on the helmet, on the, oh god, why can't I remember the name of it? The wreath around his helmet was hit with Gutrippa Flesh. It's just a really nice kind of light pastel-y green color, which worked perfectly for base coating that color. Obviously we did all the silver and the black on the helmet as well as we were going through the process of painting the armor. And then it was time to work Seraphim Sepia over the armor. At this point people may be screaming. I have loaded the sepia onto a wet palette so it is thinned to no end, and as I'm working with it I am making sure it does not pool in any way, shape or form. This shade is mainly for the benefit of all the other colors, but I do need it in all the recesses and cracks of the armor. And obviously the coat of white that was on the model already is not pure enough to give you that finished look, so I am going to go with this technique, which is applying sepia over the entire miniature and then working it back up from there. So this is it with the entire sepia. As you can see, it didn't let it pool on any of the armor. It's quite smooth, it's quite clean looking. I added some texture paste to the base. I finished up the base before I went on to the layering process. That brought the model up to this stage. And some people might leave it like this, liking the armor looks really good here. It's just not quite white enough. And this is the trick. If any of you struggle with white and do not own this paint, ProAcryl Bold Titanium White. It is the most incredible white paint that I have ever used. It is super thin, it is super smooth, and it goes on like a dream. For 90% of the armor that I'm layering up now, it is a single coat of white to give me good opacity, to get me a nice solid coat on the armor. Some parts, the knees, kind of flat panels over the hips and the shoulder pad, I may have gone over with a second coat just to make sure I got a really solid coat. But I'm telling you, for the majority of it, a single coat is all you need. Because it's so thin, it works off the tip of your brush so well. It doesn't become chalky halfway through. It doesn't start to scrape. The paint doesn't start to tear. None of that. So I went from being super concerned about painting up this white armor to loving the result. So here's about half the model done. You can see leg to leg the difference. And you can see how smooth it actually is. Underneath this bright light, it's kind of hard to see. I will be showing you some high definition pictures at the end of the video, which will give you a better inclination as to how it turned out. And here I am working around the different face panel parts of the helmet. And if I was using a normal paint with this, at this point it would be trying to get chalky. I'm constantly trying to re-thin it, but not get it too thin. It's a nightmare. All of the white armor layered up, the model is looking in a much better place. We jumped to Ushabti Bone and just touched up the ribbons or parchment tabard that's going down the front of him. And then obviously the skull on the base as well, which I forgot to do until the very end. So some moving magic at the end. You'll see that skull that's underneath the barbed wire get painted, but it should have been at this stage with the Ushabti Bone, but I forgot. After Ushabti Bone is done, it's time to work up that blue. So we're going to go for two stages. We're going to start with Kantor Blue and give it a nice coat, just leaving the darkness in the very, very deep folds and creases of the cape itself. He does have a very short cape. That's another thing I was worried. Why does he have such a short little cape? What is that? Does it mean something historically? I know a lot of the Space Marine stuff is based off of history. Does anybody know why the cape is so small? Macragge Blue was then used to highlight the raised areas again, just to make it pop. We also went in on the blue around the knee pad and on the eagle's head on the shoulder pad. And then he's got his tilt shield with the number 3 on it. That's a half blue, half black tilt shield. So we're going in with the blue and touching up that half as well. Nothing too crazy. From there, we're going to go to Ironbreaker, and this is the metallic of choice for layering up both the gold and silver parts of this model. Haven't seen my videos before, I do this technique quite a lot where I'll use gold and silver throughout the model, but when it gets to the layering stage, I just use a nice bright silver to highlight them. As you can see, I use this kind of stipple, touch, kind of scratchy highlight technique. You can see it a lot better on the Power Fist. Scraping along sharp edges and just hitting the kind of hard points of the model and leaving flat parts of it nice and shaded. I've been doing this ever since Black Templars came out a couple of years ago. That's when I first started doing this, and I haven't really stopped since. Khorne Red was quickly used to highlight the little tassely rope. I'm really bad with names on parts. I don't know what the name of this thing is. I know this does have a name, but it's usually worn over the shoulder pad, over a shoulder guard, but who knows. Corvus Black was used to highlight the casing of the plasma pistol, and a few other bits around the helmet guard underneath the bottom with the soft seals, stuff like that. Got a quick highlight, but you didn't need to go crazy on that part. With the helmet layered up, it's time to go for the wreath. So Nurgling Green was then brought in, and just the tips of each of those leaves on the wreath were hit with that color, just to make it nice and neat, make it pop a little bit, so it's not such a flat color. As you can see, it looks nice and tidy. I painted that bright silver into the eye lens as well, so that I could just come in with a Blood Angel's red contrast and paint that into the eye lenses to give you the glowing red eye effect with absolute minimum effort. I did the same thing. The bright silver was painted onto the coils of the plasma pistol, and then Talassar Blue contrast was then brought in and covered over the plasma coils to give it that blue glow. Sorry for the lack of focus there. My camera just wants to focus on my hands today for some crazy reason. And with that, I put the helmet on the body, and that was a finished Captain Messinius miniature. Like I said, I've got some high definition pictures coming up now so you can see what he actually looks like. It's kind of hard to tell with this video with the bright light. But I am super pleased with how he turned out. I'm super happy to put him on a shelf with the rest of my Space Marine force. I can't wait to see what Black Library models are going to come out in the future, because I do love the lore and I love characters that have a deep backstory. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you learned something. And there we have it, guys. One Captain Messinius painted up and ready for the tabletop. I definitely need to put him in an army. I'm not quite sure which army he is going to go into as it stands. The last time I seen him in a story, he was in command of a Legion strength force of Space Marines, which is kind of insane to think of any Space Marine leading such a force, but that's what he was doing. So I think he's a bit more important than we realize. Thank you guys for sticking around to the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, make sure you give it a like. Ask me any questions you have in the comments below, and I will get back to each and every one of you guys. And if you have not already hit that subscribe button, please take 2 seconds of your day and hit it. It would mean the world to me. I'll see you guys in the next video.